And look who's here. It's Pete Prisco here on CBS Sports HQ, a special day because today is when he unveils his annual ranking of the top 100 players in the NFL. Pete, how did this year compare to years past?
Well, I think the top 10 in terms of who the players are is actually pretty easy. But there's a large group of guys from 11 to 40 that you could play with and move around, and which I did, by the way, in a lot of scenarios. It's tough. I think the 10 is pretty easy with maybe one or two different guys you can move in and out. But after that, it gets tough. There's a large middle class of stars. And not the middle class of the league, the middle class of the stars.
How do you weigh it position-wise with quarterback becoming so much more important in the NFL?
Well, if we did that, we'd have 1 through 15 would be all quarterbacks. And so I don't do that. And I think there's a real impact in terms of the quarterback position on what's happening in the NFL nowadays with the game, the way it's played, throwing the ball. And so you're going to lean more toward the quarterbacks. And I love quarterbacks. I'm a quarterback guy. I've always been that way. But for the first time in a long time, I don't have a quarterback at the top of the list.
That would be Aaron Donald at the top, the number one player in Pete's top 100. And then 3 quarterbacks, Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen. Now, Patrick Mahomes was the number one player last year, not just the number one quarterback, but the number one player overall. He drops to number 3. We're going to go through pretty much his entire, not every player, but we're going to show you and break down his top 100 all throughout this hour on CBS Sports HQ. Pete, you had a quote in your article, which is up on CBSSports.com right now. Dive in and eat it up. You're writing to the readers and the viewers. Nobody will be happy, that much I know, but for all those out there ready to kill me for the list, I offer you this. Try it. It's not easy to do, especially in a league where there are so many good players. It's not just fans who get upset with it. Over the years, you've had players come on CBS Sports HQ upset that they're not on it.
Yeah, and look, I love the feedback. It's what we do. It's what we're in the business for, is to you put your opinion out, and I think my opinion, which is educated and based on watching tape and talking to people, I think it's fair and I think it's balanced. And if you don't like it, oh well. I mean, that's okay. Bring it. And if you're a player who's not on the list or thinks you should be on the list, play better and get on the list.
Is there one ranking in particular you think is going to have, the most feedback from fans or potentially players?
No, I think there will be some feedback, the fact that it's not a quarterback at the top. I think that will push back. And I've already looked, I've gotten some feedback. How could I put Donald? If they didn't win the Super Bowl, would he be number one? The reason I put Aaron Donald in the number one spot is simple for me. There's no argument to be made who the best defensive player or defensive lineman in the league is. It's Aaron Donald. There's an argument to be made at quarterback. This isn't how you would draft, by the way. If we were drafting, Aaron Donald wouldn't be the first player picked. It would be one of the quarterbacks because of the value, like you talked about.
More important.
Probably one of the younger quarterbacks, not one of the older quarterbacks that you're building for the future. So it might be Patrick Mahomes, it might be Josh Allen. I think that's where you would lean if you were drafting, but that's not what this is about. He played his position that much better than anybody else did theirs, and that's why he's the number one player in this list.
A couple of your buddies wanted to jump in and maybe pick apart some of the list. Will Brinson and Ryan Wilson with us here. Will, can you really argue with Aaron Donald at number one? I've heard so many of our experts, you might be included, say he is the best player in the NFL and one of the best all time.
Yeah, I mean, you can, if anything, you can argue that Aaron Donald is the greatest defensive player of all time. You're not going to argue he's not the best player in the NFL. And I think, to Pete's point, if you're going independent of position, which I mean, it's Pete's criteria, but I do think there's a lot of that in there, as you guys just talked about with the quarterbacks. If you go independent of position, then Aaron Donald is the best player in the NFL. And frankly, he probably could have been number one the last 5 years. That's just how good he's been. The only flaw on Aaron Donald's career resume is that he wasn't an All-Pro as a rookie, but he was AP Defensive Rookie of the Year. Like, that's literally the only flaw in his entire resume, and now he's got the Super Bowl on top of it. I have no problem with Aaron Donald being number one overall on this list, especially given just how much he makes that Rams defense go.
So, Hassel, I made a note as Pete was defending his credentials, and I noticed these 3 words: fair and balanced. After spending about 6 months with Pete, the last 6 months, I think fair and balanced aptly describes Pete's perspective on most things. So I think that fits. In terms of the Aaron Donald side, I agree with Brinson. I think I get it. Look, if you want to rank quarterbacks, that's fine, rank quarterbacks. But Pete's trying to identify the best player, and I think it's hard to argue, as Pete noted, that the best player at his position last year, and it's not even really that close, was probably Aaron Donald. He was dominant from start to finish, and he's an integral part of what they do in that defense. It starts up front with him, and it's incredible to think. By the way, I wouldn't go so far as to say what Brinson likes to repeat on the Pick Six podcast he just said here, that maybe Aaron Donald's the best defensive player ever. That's a bridge too far for me. I'd be interested to hear what you think about that, Pete. But I think Aaron Donald is so incredibly important to his football team, to their success, and you don't say that a lot about defenders in today's pass-happy NFL.
Well, you know what Brinson is. He's what's happening now guy. Oh, look, he's the greatest. Matt Stafford's the greatest in the world. Aaron Donald's the best defensive player who ever played the game. Lawrence Taylor would like to say a few words, by the way. And there are some great defensive tackles like Mean Joe Green, guys like that who don't get the due they deserve because a lot of guys like Brinson don't remember watching them play. So slow your roll. Brinson, he could end up being that guy, but he's not there yet.
I said maybe you old man yelling about Mean Joe Green out there.
You don't remember watching Mean Joe Green. He was dominant.
Of course I don't remember watching Mean Joe Green.
To be fair to Brinson, though, he had Matthew Stafford in the Hall of Fame before he even led the Rams to a Super Bowl last season.
He
right?
did.
So, I mean,
he did.
He's kind of
ahead of the curve.
So Aaron Donald is number one. Last year's number one was Patrick Mahomes. He's not even number two. That would be Aaron Rodgers at number two, Pete. And again, hard to argue when he's the back-to-back MVP.
Yeah, and look, I think Rodgers played better than Mahomes did last year. It's not that, again, if we were drafting, you would take Mahomes first because he's younger. But we're not. We're talking about how they played, what we think they're going to do going forward. And I know he's got uncertainty at the wide receiver position, no Devontae Adams, but so does Mahomes. He doesn't have Tyreek Hill anymore. I just think Rodgers, the way he played last year, earned the right to have this spot as the top quarterback in this league. And right now, you can make a case for a number of those guys. That's the thing about this position. You could argue Tom Brady had the best year of all of them. You could argue that, Josh Allen was even better than Mahomes last year. And so I think there's an argument there, which is why I put Aaron Donald one, but I put Rodgers as the top quarterback.
So two Aarons to lead the way. Wilson, what do you think of Aaron Rodgers being the top-ranked quarterback in Pete Prisco's list?
Again, it's hard to argue too much with the rankings here, these top two picks. I think I would have leaned towards Patrick Mahomes. And, Pete, I'll just ask you, how much did you put into the weights of the sort of Aaron Rodgers' inability to make decisions, his what he did last summer in terms of sort of pouting, it felt like, whereas Patrick Mahomes feels more like a team player. I don't know if that matters to you at all, but I think I would lean Patrick Mahomes, discounting the age just in terms of that as well.
You do know there's a giant I in Prisco, right? I don't care about it. Come on, team. What are you talking about? It's all about me. No, it didn't bother me one bit.
Brinson?
Yeah. I mean, I'm actually a little disappointed that Pete didn't, put the onions on the table and make Josh Allen the number two player on his list, because that's his guy. And if you go by approximate value over Pro Football Reference, he actually beats out both Rodgers and Mahomes, 13 seconds away from, as Pete and I talked about on the podcast, maybe 13 seconds away from setting up a Super Bowl win. And then you'd probably be putting Josh Allen number one on the list. So, as far as like the quarterbacks go, 2, 3, and 4 are pretty interchangeable for me. And I think you could, you could definitely put Tom Brady in there. If we're going to flash the quarterback graphic, I would note that 48 is insultingly low for Matthew Stafford, future Hall of Famer and Super Bowl champion.
Wow. I'm telling you, I think he's getting under the table money from the Stafford camp. I really do. We got to check on that. The IRS wants a word with you, Brinson. You're getting paid under the table by Matt Stafford and his camp.
Yeah, Brinson has Stafford top 50 NFL player all time, not just going into the season. We'll have more quarterback discussion in just a little bit with some of the younger quarterbacks. You might have seen a couple side by side there at, I think, 20 and 21, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert. But let's go to a newcomer to the top 10 and a newcomer to the whole thing. Cooper Kupp, number 5. And so I went back to last year's list to look to see how far he jumped. And I didn't see him.
Wasn't on the list.
He was not a top 100 player.
No, he was coming off a season where he had 93 catches and only 3 touchdown receptions. It didn't earn him onto the list last year. He's now the best receiver in the National Football League. You cannot argue that. I mean, are there guys people might take ahead of him because of their raw ability? Maybe. Younger? Maybe. But coming off that season he had last year, it was truly special to watch. He cannot be covered. And that is a trait that makes him the best receiver in the National Football League. It's an amazing story to see a guy go from where he was to where he is right now, which is a dominant.
Has anybody, in your recollection, made that kind of a jump from unranked to top 5?
Well, Josh Allen went high one year from down way
I think he went
down.
unranked to 10 or so.
Yeah, that's close.
Brinson, do you think this Kupp ascension has anything to do with who's throwing him the football now?
You better believe it does. That's the breakfast narrative, baby. We're talking about these guys sit there and eat their scones, they eat their muffins, they eat their bagels. They probably eat healthier stuff than that, but you get the point. Kupp and Matthew Stafford grinded on tape. They spent tons of time together, going over the offense, learning the intricacies of what Sean McVay was going to call, getting on the same page and developing this chemistry and rapport that, resulted in Cooper Kupp winning the receiver triple crown last year with receptions, yards, and touchdowns. This is a historically great receiving season. And it is in part because the Rams upgraded substantially at the quarterback position, and maybe more importantly, because of the time that Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp spent in the offseason to help. When you get a new guy coming in and you have to figure out, to get on the same page as a new quarterback, a guy you've never played with before, they went the extra mile. They did the extra homework. They put in the extra hours to make sure that they could be the best that they possibly could be in that offense, and it paid massive dividends with this huge season and a championship.
The year before, Robert Woods had 90 catches and 6 touchdowns. So he actually had the better season.
Well, and I remember just from the last 2 fantasy drafts, it's kind of been Cooper Kupp or Robert Woods. They've been right side by side. Like, pick one or the other, it's not going to really make a difference. This past year, it made a huge difference, Ryan.
Yeah, I'm not buying this. Pete's talking about the remarkable story like Cooper Kupp was born without feet or hands, and he made such a comeback to do what he was able to do in the NFL. He's always been good. And Pete, by the way, I think there are very few people around the NFL, I know what you're going to say, so I'll let you say it, who wouldn't take Devontae Adams, Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, Jamar Chase, and maybe even Steph Diggs over Cooper Kupp. Is Cooper Kupp great? Absolutely. But he's basically a rich man's Hunter Renfrow who did not make your list. Cooper was 5th. Hunter didn't make the top 100. So
that might be the worst comment
there?
we've ever had on a top 100 show right there. Are you kidding me, Ryan? He's a rich man's Hunter Renfrow?
Yeah, he
is.
Oh,
my God.
When did Ryan Wilson become Mr. Hot Take?
They must have got in his ear from above, top in the office up there.
Ryan, we need
a hot take,
little
Ryan.
spice from Ryan Wilson.
Cooper Kupp is Hunter Renfrow.
That's not what I said.
Okay, explain what you mean.
Kind of what you said.
Yeah, Cooper Kupp is a rich man's version of Hunter Renfrow. I joke all the time that Hunter Renfrow is Will Brinson's younger brother with worse hairline, but he's incredibly more athletic. And by the way, Hunter Renfrow just got paid. So there's a reason that the Raiders like him and that Josh McDaniels likes him and that Derek Carr, another guy that you don't seem to like very much, Pete, likes him as well. Is he Cooper Kupp? Absolutely not. Cooper Kupp is a top 10 wide receiver, maybe top 7, but the names I mentioned, Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, I would take all those guys. I don't think that's outrageous to say.
It's outrageous to say he might be a top 10 wide receiver. He just led the league in receptions, receiving yards, and receiving touchdowns. Like, he's the best wide receiver in football right now. He's not a rich man's Hunter Renfrow. He's uncoverable. He was their number 1 weapon. He was Matthew Stafford's go-to in every situation, and he still got open. Hunter Renfrow is like I'm like a poor man's version of Hunter Renfrow. How dare you say that about Cooper Kupp?
Next thing he's going to compare him to Fred Biletnikoff.
I think our man Ruben from the social team got in Ryan.
I agree.
Give me a good headline for social. Cooper Kupp is a rich man's Hunter Renfrow.
Because he can't possibly believe that.
He might be a top 10 wide receiver.
Good luck in your mentions, Wilson, because you were going to get lit up when they clip that and tweet that out. Lit up.
God, I feel bad for you.
Poor Ryan.
Welcome to my world, Ryan.
But, hey, let's move on to another LA Ram in the top 10, Pete. 3 Rams in the top 10. That's more than any other team, and it's the only cornerback in the top 20, Jalen Ramsey.
Yeah, and Jalen Ramsey has been an outstanding cover player for a long time. Played a lot of man-to-man, excelled at it, was great at it. But he wasn't as good at the other stuff. and he's developed into being good at all the stuff now. He can play outside, he can play zone, he played down in the box, he played in the slot. He did everything last year in that defense. They changed his role in a big way, and he responded. He's the best cover corner, all-around corner in the National Football League, and that's why he's in the top 10.
All right, hot take Wilson. What do you have for this one?
If Hunter Renfrow played cornerback, he would be Jalen Ramsey. Next question, Hassel. No, for real. I have no issue with this. Pete's exactly right. Jalen Ramsey is an absolute dog. Does he get burned at times? Yeah, because he plays he plays in this era of pass-happy football, but he is extremely physical. He gets in wide receivers' ears. He doesn't let them off the line of scrimmage. He does everything that you want, whatever your version of shutdown corner is in today's football, to be. He does those things. I have no issue with that. I have a few issues with some of the guys that perhaps are on the outside looking in, but those are just nitpicks. I think Jalen Ramsey feels like a layup here, a little more so than Cooper Kupp.
I would like to point out on the Ramsey thing, plus with Donald and then Kupp, that if Pete had correctly ranked Matthew Stafford and had not pushed him down the list just to spite me, which I think I have in receipt form via text message, that you would really have a firm understanding of like what the Rams are trying to do with their not stars and scrubs, but with their the F them picks approach, right? You have these 4 superstars that eat up a ton of cap space that are the core of their team in Kupp, Stafford, Aaron Donald, and Jalen Ramsey. You see why 3 of those guys are in Pete's top 10, right? And that's really what the Rams want to do. They've locked up this core 4. They supplement it with really smart drafting in the later rounds. Les Snead's done a great job with that. And then some nice free agent additions and some draft and develop guys. And then what you have is a window of the next 2, 3, 4 years where the Rams are going to contend for Super Bowls as long as those 4 guys are on the field for full seasons.
It's interesting because they're in direct opposite of the New England Patriots, who we'll talk about not having anybody on the list, but their 2019 draft, and Brinson mentioned it, supplementing the stars. You have to be able to do that if you're going to pay the top guys. Their 2019 draft, they got a starting defensive tackle. These are all from 2 down. Darrell Henderson, backup running back. Starting defensive tackle, Greg Gaines. Starting guard, David Edwards. They got 2 safeties that both played and started last year in Rapp and I'm trying to think of the other guy, but right off the head. They got 7 starters. 7 off of that draft.
And that's the draft that the Patriots got an A+ originally, and now you get regraded at an F?
Yes. And the Rams got an A+ because of the way they drafted.
The Patriots don't have any players in the top 100. How many teams don't have any players in this?
6.
I think we'll talk more about that later, but 6 teams do not have any players. We'll talk about the team that leads the way in just a little bit. It's not the LA Rams, though they do lead the way in the top 10. Let's recap the top 10 from Pete Prisco and his ranking of the top 100 players. I've seen some comments on social media, a lot of people praising Pete Prisco and CBS Sports. People saying, hey, for Pete Prisco, this is a pretty damn good list. I don't have many complaints, although Ryan Wilson would not have Cooper Kupp anywhere near the top 10 or top 20 or top 50, apparently. All right, up next, Joe Burrow or Justin Herbert? One took his team to the Super Bowl, the other has not made the playoffs yet. So, why is Herbert ranked higher? Pete explains next.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.